Hello folks, you're listening to episode 6 of our new sports betting podcast, A Mug's Game, with your hosts, Smeg and Ronnie.
How are we doing, Smeg? What a brilliant week we have this week. The World Cup's only 2 days away. We've the second major of the year 2 days away as well in the golf, which begins Thursday, the US Open, as well as a load of great GA games again next weekend, including what should be a cracker in Ennis between Clare and Limerick.
Yeah, it's absolutely very exciting time to be a sports fan and to be a punter, and there will be plenty of bets for us to get our teeth stuck into now today. So we hope you enjoy the podcast, because we're certainly excited about it ourselves.
So Smeg, quick recap of the weekend. Sloan got to that final since our last podcast. Played great stuff in the quarters and semis and lost out in the final to the favourite Hab.
Yeah, look at Ronnie. I actually would prefer not to talk about Sloan right now, because it's still a bit raw, and if we actually get into it, it'll probably end up turning into a bit of a therapy session.
Yeah. No one wants that.
No, nobody wants that. Like, how to nurse a broken heart with Smeg and Ronnie is not really what we're about here. So we'll move on from that from now, and maybe we'll chat about it later on.
Stuff.
So we're going to start off the podcast by last week. Of course, we talked about the French Open tennis bets and how they've gone for us. And now that the hurling season is over, you actually you tipped up a few big bets in the hurling season. And now with the Leinster group stage over and the Munster group stage basically over, a few dead rubbers, obviously the Clare and Limerick matches is something to look forward to. We can talk about how those bets came in for you, Ronnie. And
yeah, I suppose over the 5 podcasts, it's important to look back. Sometimes you can lose the run yourself. You can be doing better than you thought, or worse than you thought. But I suppose a couple of GA ones that finished off the weekend that we flagged up early on were Galway at the top of the Leinster group, where we had 2.5 points on them to do that, and they did that quite comfortably, really.
And what price were they?
They did that quite comfortably. They were 11 to 10, so they were a good price. And we also had that bet from earlier on, the same stake on Waterford to win less than 2 games in the Munster Championship, and that's come in as well. I suppose and
that was 30 to 8 as well,
13
which is a great price for not to be a great bet.
Yeah, in regards to Waterford, like, they got well beaten by Clare and Limerick, but in between, of course, things could have changed if they had if that umpire hadn't been on our side against Tip, who knows, but no, it was a good bet. Overall, Smeg, for the podcast bets I put up, we've showed profit of 12 points, so plus 12 points, which is decent, which shows, let's take a monetary example. If you had €25 as your point stake, you'd have that €25 be turned into 300.
Brilliant.
325, whatever by now. So
course, yeah.
it was decent. Yeah, decent. It's been a decent few weeks in that front. I suppose on some of the in-running bets on the Twitter page, I'm actually down 2.5 points, so I've got to try to get back during the week. So 2.5 points down over the 6 weeks on the Twitter page. I suppose that the reason for that really is maybe from Sunday, the game you were at, the Dublin Longford game.
Yeah.
Where I had a couple of points on Dublin. I thought they were a cracking line to get over 35 points when Longford went down to 14 men when Cluxton was poleaxed. But as you saw afterwards, Dublin created numerous goal chances, but just wasn't the day for those goals to be stuck. Crossbars were hit, final passes weren't laid off properly, and it was one of those ones. I thought after
Longford goalie Paddy had a great game in goals.
He did have a good game, but I would 100% do that bet again.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to take that back in any way. But it's important to keep track of what you're doing.
Yeah, but just before we carry on, I just want to reiterate that I had nothing to do with that bet. For any Longford people that are listening to the podcast, I had not. I would never tip up anybody against my own county, and I mentioned that last week. So I just hope people aren't excommunicating me from the county now at this stage after that. So I had nothing to do with it. But look at it's been you've flagged up some very good bets. I have to say, Ronnie, in the GA, and hopefully there'll be a few more as the championship goes on, and of course there'll probably be a few more football bets now. With the Super 8s coming up,
there's some good qualifying games coming up the week after this as well. Yeah,
but the big one that we're all unbelievably excited about is the World Cup, and it just captures the imagination of everybody, even people who aren't even football fans, and just all across the world. And it's just, ever since we were kids, and we talk about, our first memory of the World Cup probably is Italia 19, and just what an amazing experience it was, and just the romance hasn't really gone even after all those years. this. But we're here to look at the World Cup from a betting point of view, and I'm here to go through the group stages with you, Ronnie, and to see if we can find some value from each group, if possible.
Yeah, I can't wait for just a start, Meg. Even from outside of a betting point of view, I think the two main reasons we look forward to it. First of all, is that you don't have a standout team like maybe France '98 or maybe the Spanish team in 2010. But what you do have is you have 6 or 7 really, really good teams, really very, very good teams with a lot of very good players, all with a flaw or two. Which is why, if you ask 5 or 6 of your friends who think could win, you might get 5 or 6 different answers, and that's a brilliant tournament to look forward to. And the other thing is, it's in Russia, which means temperature wise it's not going to be stifling heat like you had Brazil a few years ago, or South Korea and Japan back in 2002. We should make for better games overall, I think,
and even kickoff times as well, of course, are going to be more recent for us. So we look at Group A to start with. Obviously, you've tipped up a few bets already on the World Cup, and we
might repeat them at times.
We'll repeat them at times, of course. But we're looking at the host Russia. We have Saudi Arabia in there. We have Egypt and Uruguay. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Group A. I won't spend too long because we did speak about this before. It's a soft enough group. Uruguay are the standout team. They're a team who I have I have 2 bets on this group so far. One bet includes Uruguay getting out of it and actually going a lot further away than that, reaching a quarter final. We mentioned the time Uruguay in both boxes. They're brilliant. 2 centre halves, Atletico Madrid centre halves, Godin and Jimenez, and 2 strikers, Suarez and Cavani, two of the best in the world. We spoke with their goal scoring record that time. We don't have to mention it again. In between, their midfield has improved with Bentancur from Juventus and Vicino from Inter Milan. They are a dangerous side for anyone to meet, and this is a good group for them to have. So I already have 2.5 points on Uruguayans to reach the quarter final at 13-8. That was with Boyles. I expect them to get out of this group. I wouldn't turn anybody off backing them to win the group. I'm not sure what the price are on that now, but they should win that group, and then you're looking at a second round game against runners up from the Spain, Portugal, Morocco and Iran group. The market would suggest it could be the Portuguese they're playing. We'll just go with that, but it's no cert. But the Uruguayans to reach the last 8 is what I fancy there. I will speak the other bet I flagged up a few weeks ago on this was actually Egypt getting out of this group. Now, since then, of course, Mo Salah, their best player, has got injured in the final and hasn't trained since. And even up as far as today, he hasn't actually trained since. That worries me. It definitely worries me a little bit. I have 2.5 points already staked on Egypt to get out of this group at 11-8, which I thought was a really good bet at the time, going through their side. But Salah is the key to all this because they are a fairly defensive team, and he's the key with that on the break. What the damage he can do, we've seen it all year with Liverpool. But I'm actually, of course, you can cover it, you can back against them in match games over the weekend. But I'm not going to particularly go against it because I do think Saudi Arabia is so poor. I think Russians are there to be taken on that I wouldn't rule it out even without a fully fit Salah.
Yeah,
I wouldn't.
And who did they play in their first match?
Well, that's the thing. That the first game is Uruguay-Egypt. That's on Friday at 1:00. It's a serious game. The first group game of any group can't be ever underestimated, especially in a group like this where, maybe Egypt, if you're looking at Uruguay being the best side in it, ideally to back Egypt you'd want to be playing later in the tournament. But anyway, that's the way it is in this.
But from the flip side of that coin, if there is a team that you wouldn't want Salah, that you wouldn't want, you'd be happy enough for Salah not to be fit.
That's true.
It could be Uruguay because you'd imagine that they'd be thinking their best chances will be against Russia.
Yeah, they've got 6 points to play for the next 2 games.
So that's certainly something to take on board when you're considering whether to cover or not on that Egypt bet, if you have followed us on that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm going to go ahead with, I'm going to leave at the 2 bets I've done already here, Smeg. Uruguay to reach the last 8. I have 2.5 points in my 13-8, and also I'm going to leave it sit with Egypt to get out of that group at 2.5 points at 11-8.
Okay, let's have a look at Group B now. We have Morocco, Iran, Portugal and Spain. How do you see that one going?
Well, the market would suggest it's straightforward stuff. Spain and Portugal get out of the group. I couldn't argue a whole lot against. What I will say is the first match is Spain-Portugal. That's brilliant. That's brilliant for the viewers. It's brilliant for us. It's kind of the opposite of the Belgium-England group where they're playing the third game, where they both probably qualify by the time it comes around. But now Spain and Portugal, one of these lose the games Friday night, well then serious pressure is on. No matter who's in the group, if you have to win maybe 2 games, history has shown that's very, very hard to do, and it's a line I've gone down and I'll speak about now, because as we go into the other groups, there's no point in repeating myself. I think when big teams play each other in the first game, and whichever, and if there's a winner and a loser, not a draw, obviously, the losing team can find it very hard to get momentum going. You've such a short period of time. You're talking maybe playing 2 matches in the next 9 days or so, and if we look back to, I'll link this up with a bet in a few minutes, but if you look back to the last World Cup, there were some big games in the first group games in the 2014 World Cup. I'm just going to rattle off 5 scores to you, Smeg. Brazil beat Croatia 3-1 their first game. Croatia didn't get out of the group after. Spain lost to Holland 5-1. Spain did not get out of the group after. England lost to Italy 2-1. England did not get out of the group after that.
And they would have been fancied, of course.
Germany beat Portugal 4-0. Portugal did not come back from that. These are examples. There was another couple in that World Cup, so these are examples of biggish games as your first game, and when a team loses, they really struggle to get out of that group after that. And likewise, the flip of it is, actually, in the history of World Cup, if you win your first game, it shows 85% of all teams who've won their first game in World Cup get out of the group. You know, it isn't just, it's just one game out of 3. The first game is massive. You saw Ireland in Euro 12 when they lost to Croatia 3-1. They were done. They were done. They didn't want to play Spain yet, and they were just beaten. The players say that themselves. They didn't, they went out with a whimper after that. And that happens all the time. So in that group, you're talking with Spain, Portugal Friday night. What a great game. And I think because that game is there is a small chance for both Iran and Morocco of getting out of that group. I mentioned before in a podcast, Meg, I think Portugal were one of the poorest winners of a tournament we've ever in our lifetime. 2 years ago, Euro 16, they actually didn't win a game. They drew every match in the group stages. You remember Austria, Hungary, was it Iceland? They drew it in those games, got through against Poland on penalties. They beat a Welsh team without, we mentioned, without Bale and Davies. They're not a great side, and they're a couple of years on from that. Big players like even Ronaldo, but also their defence, Fonte, Pepe. They're older. Their only advantage from 2 years ago is that Bernardo Silva, the City player, is in the team. He wasn't then, but I think. It wouldn't surprise me if Spain beat them Friday night and Portugal somehow messed up in either of the other 2 games against Iran or Morocco, who aren't. We obviously don't know too many of the Iranian Moroccan players, but they're certainly not ranked or rated in the world rankings, down at the bottom of the pile like some of the other teams in the other groups. Iran are managed by Carlos Queiroz, who's a Portuguese, who knows Portugal like the back of his hand. Morocco are supposed to be no mugs, qualified easily from Africa. They have Benassia, the Juventus centre half. They have a couple of players attacking midfielders, wingers. One of them plays for Ajax. He got a Dutch Player of the Year, Ziyech his name. They have Belanda from Galatasaray as well, who was a French Player of the Year only a few years ago. They have a few. They have a sprinkle of something, and maybe if Portuguese aren't on their game. The other thing is regards Spain, and a lot of people haven't backed out right. Spain's manager, Lopetegui, is now the new Real Madrid manager, and that's only announced today. Apparently Spanish players are shocked about that. If I was a Spanish backer, I'd be a little bit worried about that. To be announced a couple of days before a tournament like this, So what I'm going to do in that group, Smeg, is I'm going to basically oppose Portugal in some ways. I'm going to put a half point, 0.5 points on Morocco to finish runner-up, and also a half point on Iran to finish runner-up at biggish odds. Iran to finish runners-up in this group are 13-2 with Paddy Power, and Morocco to do so are 9-2. So there might be a bit of value there, going by the fact that Spain and Portugal have to play each other in the first game.
I like the reason behind that, and the other thing about that, if either of those teams do manage to finish runner up, it would be also good for the Uruguay bet, because don't Uruguay?
I would. The groups pair off in the next 16.
If the Uruguay bet comes in.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's have a look at Group C. Now we have the French, who have an abundance of talent, as we all know. Australia, Peru, and Denmark. So a curious group for me. I find obviously Australia we'd argue must be the weakest team in that group. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, and I like that. If you reverse what I was just saying there, Australia have to play France in the first game. I think when I think there's an advantage when there's a team like France in your group, or the big boys, say France, Brazil, let's say Germany, and the draw matters. The draw meaning when you play these teams in the group matters. Like we mentioned, you may often mention with your tennis draws, especially for the Grand Slams, how important the draw is. You look at the hurling over the last few weeks. We spoke with the start. The teams that play 4 matches in a row in the hurling were like Tipperary, Waterford, Offaly, all out of the championship.
Gone, yeah.
The other team had 4 matches in a row, Wexford, and they barely got over the line. But that last couple of points against Dublin. So the draw matters, and it matters in the World Cup as well. Because if you were in French group, when do you want to play France? You want to play them in your third game when they might have 6 points to board, might change a couple of players, and they're just not fully, they might even be qualified, not fully at it. And also, if you're playing them last, you might have a few points on the board yourself, and there's more confidence and so on. So, likes of Australia, I think playing France at the start are in trouble there. I think it looks like a shoot off between Peru and Denmark for that second spot. Peru qualified 5th in South America to beat New Zealand in the playoffs to get there. They did well to come 5th, but I suppose Peru, they actually lost they lost to Bolivia in a game 2-0 in the early on that qualifiers, but actually Bolivia had a legal player for, I don't know what the reason was, and the match was overturned and Peru actually won 3-0, and because of that ultimately they got into playoffs. So I don't know how good they really are. We saw the Danes in the second leg, and Ireland were bad, but to give Ireland a right hiding, and they've got Ericsson of course,
and they're just solid. They're quite solid all over the pitch.
And they've got Christensen, the Chelsea centre half as well. I do have a France-Denmark dual forecast done here in this group, a small bet linked in with another group I'll speak to later on. But I fancy France and France and Denmark to come out of this group. A dual forecast means it doesn't matter who comes first or second.
Right.
So we'll come back to that in a second. But I fancy France and Denmark. The big game there is actually the Peru-Denmark game, which is on Saturday, I think.
And of course the Danes as well, they have a good history of doing, I know it's been a while, but they have a good history of doing well in major championships as well. They talk about 92 Euros, and then of course the Laudrup team of 94. I remember them giving I think it was Nigeria, the great Nigeria team, or the big at the time, the right hockey in the last 16.
No, it's a good group from. I know
that's a long time ago, but
from,
there is something in the psyche of the Danes that they don't fear these big tournaments.
Yeah.
So that's the one you're going for. 1 point. So it's a 1 point.
Well, that's coming into the next group. Actually, that was Group C. So actually, in Group D, where we have Argentina, Iceland, Croatia, and Nigeria. Again, like what I said about the last group, Iceland, I think have to play Argentina first, which isn't good news for them. I don't think. A lot of talk about Argentina not being not defensively sound and so on, which is probably true, but it shouldn't matter for playing likes of Iceland, Nigeria. I don't think. I think it'll be later on the tournament where the RGs might be caught.
Yeah.
But in this group, Argentina and Croatia are levels above both Iceland and Nigeria. I know Iceland have had a great couple of years, and of course beat England a couple of years ago. But then you saw them when they played the French in the quarterfinals. They hammered them 5-2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They are a very, very limited team, and I don't see them getting out of the group. Croatia have been a top side for about 10 years now, apart from a couple of mess ups they have. But they've got great players: Rakitic and Brozovic and Modric in midfield. Brilliant midfield. Perisic, Inter Milan had a great season on the wing. They're a really good side. And Argentina-Croatia is a big game as the second game of the group, but I fancy both of them to come out of the group. I don't see the Nigerians or Iceland troubling the two of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a 1 point double at between 2-1 and 3-1, 1 point double at 12-5 on France, Denmark, and Argentina, Croatia to come out of those two groups. It doesn't matter what positions they come in. It's a dual forecast is what you want to bet. So I'm going to 1 point double on that at 12-5.
Right, that's a fairly good price. Now, if you do just prefer to take the 5-6 on each of them, as in France and Denmark at 5-6 to get out of the group, and Argentina and Croatia at 5-6 to get on the group, wouldn't put you off that either. That's, to me, would be on board with you there, Ronnie. I can't see any of those teams not getting through those groups. So we move on to Group E. We're halfway there now, or Group E, sorry. We're halfway there now. We got Costa Rica, Serbia, Brazil and Switzerland. So Ronnie, take it away. Brazil, opening games are Costa Rica, Serbia, Brazil, Switzerland. Again, I'm going to go back to my point the last time. I think there's an advantage in this group. You're looking basically who's going to come second, who's going to qualify with Brazil. Let's be realistic about it, between Switzerland, Costa Rica and Serbia.
and because Serbia don't have to play Brazil to the third game, I think it's advantage Serbia here. Serbia play Costa Rica in their first game, and they play Switzerland their second game, and I think at evens you can actually maybe get slightly better. I think at evens to get out of that group, that's a great bet on the Serbs. We saw them in the Irish group. They weren't great in the second game against Ireland. They destroyed them in the first game. They do have good players. They have good midfield with Matic and the Savic, which is being heavily linked with the Premier League. He actually got 12 goals from midfield for Lazio this season. They have the likes of Savic, they have Tadic and Mitrovic. They have decent attackers, and Kolarov left back, Ivanovic still there centre half. I think they're a slightly better side than Switzerland, and the fact Switzerland have to play Brazil in the first game, if they come off a defeat there, as I said to you, it's hard to get that back. It's already you could be going in 3 points behind Serbia. I'm presuming now Serbia beat Costa Rica, who are 4 years on from when they shocked teams. I don't think they're going to do that again. They're not expected to, certainly. So I'm actually liking Serbia to qualify out of this group, based on difficult players, but also based on the fact they don't have to play Brazil until the third game, and they might have the points on the board. And I'm going for I have 2 points on Serbia to get out of that group at even money. That's general.
And of course, even if they don't have the points on the board and Brazil are already through, Brazil might rest players, play a weakened team, or mightn't be quite as motivated, and that might, even if, say for example, Switzerland have an advantage going into the well, obviously they might not have an advantage, but you could have a scenario where Serbia just need a point and Brazil.
Whatever.
Like Brazil could beat Switzerland, and then all Serbia would need, and maybe Serbia and Switzerland would draw, and all Serbia would need is that point. Or it could go that, even if they lose, it could go down to the goal difference against Costa Rica. But that little extra factor is a big deal.
Yeah. It just takes away the fact from Serbia and Switzerland beat evens. I think Serbia should be slightly odds against based on the draw.
Yeah. Brilliant stuff. Okay, Group F, we have Germany, Mexico, Sweden and South Korea. Nice mix there.
Yeah, I'm going to refer back to a bet I staked it last week, actually, Smeg. If you remember, I have Brazil and Germany to top their groups, 2.5 points placed last week. We spoke with this group, 2 good groups for both of them, who were expected to go a long way. So I have 2.5 points on Brazil and Germany to win their groups. That's a 4 to 5 double. I've one other thing in this group with the Germany, Mexico, Sweden, South Korea group. It's a bit of a long shot, but again, it's going to the same team as what I'm going with here. And for the last couple of groups, when there's a superior team to the other 3, and I'm looking at this group, and I'm looking at South Korea are not playing the Germans till the third game. South Koreans aren't going in with much hope, to be honest, as in there's not much talk about them. Apparently they struggle a bit in Asia. They're not, say, close anywhere near the team they were back in 2002 when they reached the semi-finals, and that's fair enough. But what they will have pace, and they do have Son, the Spurs winger, who plays up front for them on the counter-attack. So he's a class act, and when you've got one class act when you're playing the likes of Sweden and Mexico, well, I think you've got a chance, because I don't see too many class acts in the Swedish or Mexican team as at high a level as Son is playing at for the last year. You know what I mean? They may be better teams for all we know, but what I'm saying to you is I'm going to stick 1 point on the outsider, South Korea, to get out of that group. That's at 4 to 1. You might get slightly better, but 4 to 1 with Paddy Power. I'm going to put 1 point on the South Koreas. I think it's a value bet.
Okay, brilliant stuff. Yeah, and look, like, we know what the Swedes are like. We saw them. They usually have good spirit, but like, they still have the likes of Larson in midfield. A lot of the same boys. If you look at the squad, that really Ireland should have beaten them in the Euros. Really, so they're not no great shakes. And I don't think that Mexican team is. They've had good teams in the past, but
I saw the playoff game with Italy as well. I know they got through well against Italy, but Italy were really, really desperately poor. So I wouldn't pay too much.
And we missed Italy as well. That's one of the low points. The downsides of this World Cup. Great football nations like Italy and the Netherlands.
Yeah.
You do miss them a bit.
And you can actually see who they're missing from the groups. If you compare the groups here, there's a straightforward look about the groups this year because of those 2 nations. Chile as well. So there's 3 big nations who aren't there, which might make the last 6. What will make the World Cup better maybe is the last 16 quarterfinals could be better this year, because you won't have big teams knocked out. Well, I don't think you will. Get knocked out in the group stages. Certainly not too many compared to 4 years ago when you did.
Okay, fair enough. Now we have Group G now: Belgium, Panama, Tunisia and England. our noisy neighbours, the English.
Noisy neighbours, yeah.
I mean.
Well, we had that was one of our early winners in the podcast. We'll have to cheek it onto it, of course. But we have Belgium, Panama, Tuesday. It's a straightforward group, especially the way that we spoke of the draw. It's a dream draw for England and Belgium, as in they play each other in the third game.
Yeah.
They should both 6 points. It should go into that game with both of them on 6 points. And Panama and Tunisia playing for a third spot in the last game, which is just ideal for the big nations, especially when the group that they're facing off with in the last 16 isn't one of the hardest groups either. So it's a really good draw for both England and Belgium, who should be facing off in that third game to top it, of course. The bet I have involved here is actually on Harry Kane to be England's top scorer. 2 points on him. I can't believe he's odds against with William Hill and Betway 11-10 with those to be top scorer. I think, like, you look at Kane's last 4 years, what he's done in England, like, scoring between 20 and 30 goals every season. Even with England, he's got 13 goals and 24 caps. He's he's turning 25 captain, takes the penalties, will play every single minute. In Premier League, we often see him score 2 or 3 goals against poor sides. Panama are one of the worst 2 or 3 teams in this competition. There's a chance there for Kane to get more than 1 goal in a game. So when I see him at those odds, or you can get him anywhere around evens. He's 10-11 with Boyles, for example. I got him at 11-10. You can get him 10 to anywhere around evens at all. And Harry Kane to be England's top scorer, I think, is a great bet.
And especially because if you think, Panama and Tunisia, particularly Panama being a poor side, you expect goals. It's not going to be one of those groups where maybe England might only get 3 or 4 goals in the group. You've got to expect them to put a few past Panama, and like Kane is your main candidate to get those goals. Obviously Sterling is a threat, but as you say, at odds against.
In some ways I think Sterling is nearly more of a help the way he plays. I think he's going to play as an inside winger and more supply to him.
And he will be supplying Kane.
He will be supplying Kane,
Yeah.
And 2 points on Harry Kane for to be England's top scorer. I've got them there.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. And our final group, of course, is Group H with Colombia, Japan, Poland and Senegal. You mentioned Senegal, of course, in our first podcast as one of your tips.
Yeah, I have 2.5 points to them. Actually, originally I said 2 points, but I staked it's another small bit since. I have 2.5 points on Senegal to get out of group of Boyles at 11-8. Again, it's a tight enough group, but there isn't a real start team here, and that's why I think Senegal might take advantage of. I would maybe Poland, might get in ahead of them. Colombia are a good side. They had a great World Cup 4 years ago. They've James Rodriguez in great form for Munich. In the last few months of Cuadrado there. They've Davison Sanchez, the Spurs centre half, who looks very impressive. So the Colombians are a decent side, and they're a big threat to actually England or Belgium in the last 16, I think. The Colombians. But
I was thinking, actually, I was looking at the match bet, and I was thinking to myself, geez, Japan are 5-1 to beat the Colombians. I don't see any value in that at all.
Yeah, well, Japan are supposed to be a bit of a mess. Only a few weeks ago their manager changed, and they came through the Asian qualifiers with not too much hope going into this World Cup by the sound of things. And you don't like any manager that's changed a few weeks before a World Cup it's messy looking, But I will just leave it the way I'd have it there, Smeg, with the 2.5 points in Senegal to get out of group 11-8. I'm going to leave that group at.
So you're basically fancying them ahead of Poland. As we talked about Poland before, good workman-like side, and apart from Lewandowski, don't really have a lot of stars.
Yeah, and he hasn't been playing well either recently. But no, Senegal has a good squad. Of course, Mane at his peak up front, a few players, good midfield around him with Gay and Kouat and these players. Koulibaly, the Napoli centre half at the back, So I think
what I liked about Mane is that I think he did perform well in the Champions League final.
He did, of course, yeah.
So it shows that he's ready for the big occasion
as well. Yeah.
Okay. Apart from that, now is there an outright bet that you like? Are you going to be backing? Who's your winner for the World Cup?
Well, actually, outside of that, I'll just go back once more actually before I say that. The other bets I've on are the half points on 4 goal scorers. Timo Werner, Germany. Remember, spoke about last week, 16-1. Lukaku, a half point on him at 18-1. And the other 2 were Suarez at 25-1. And Hazard at 41.
Yeah.
So add those into what we spoke about last week. They're the points I've staked on the tournament altogether. So altogether I've staked 19 points out on the outright mark, group betting and top goal scorer markets already. So just quite a bit staked. I don't have a bet staked on an outright winner. I find it very, very hard to call between those teams. I do think Germany have the best draw. If they top the group, they're going to have maybe Serbia, Switzerland in last 16, and then looking at, more than likely maybe England or Belgium quarter final, like fancy the Germans over either of them, and they're in a semi-final again if that happens. I think potential wise, I think the French, if the French have their best first 11 on the pitch, I think they're a brilliant team. I think that midfield of Kante, Pogba, Matuidi behind Griezmann, Mbappe and Dembele is just, with the likes of Giroud to come on, I think, and they don't have a bad draw either. So I like both Germany and France.
Do you rate Deschamps though? Because a lot of people thought that against Portugal he basically messed up, a bit, tactically. He had what Pogba playing deep. I know I know that's 2 years ago, and obviously
I think they've got an upgrade of players since then. Like Mbappe and Dembele, I think they're a better side. I think they're a better team than they were 2 years ago. When Sissoko, if you remember, was one of the best players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think they're a better side now. But I don't have an outright bet done, to be honest, Meg. I'm going to see how the first 1 or 2 group games go. Have you one done yourself?
Do you know what? You know me, and I love my big outsider prices. And I was just, I was struggling really to pick. I like Brazil. I like France. I got Spain in the sweepstake at work, but I actually don't particularly I don't really fancy Spain, and I don't fancy Argentina. It seems like there's a bit of unrest in the camp, but I like my outsider prices. And when you're talking about, say, Uruguay being valued at 13-8 to get through to the last 8, if you're backing them at 28-1. You got to be happy that and they're not going to be easy to beat. Like as you said, they're solid defensively, and they've got two star strikers up front. They have good, the good spirit, qualified comfortably from the group. As you mentioned as well, that the midfield has improved, and in knockout stages, if you can just be dogged and against these top teams, like you're saying, that there are some very good teams, but I don't know. Like I feel like Uruguay 28-1 is a good price.
It's a good price.
I'll be staking myself. I'm going to have my first soccer tip of the podcast series, and I'm going to say a half point each way on Uruguay to win the World Cup at 28-1.
Good stuff, Smeg. Well, it'll kick off in a couple of days, and we'll see how the match bets go over the weekend, and hope we might find something in running to flag on the Twitter page as well. But that'll do the World Cup for now, Smeg. So that was certainly bittersweet feeling overall on Sloane Stephens at the weekend.
Look, it's just so funny, like with betting, like how it messes with your mind. Like before the final, I was just absolutely delighted that she got to the final, and I was fully expecting Halep to win. I thought maybe Stephens had a chance. I knew Stephens would show up, but I fully expected Halep to win. But when she's up 6-3 and 2-0. You're already walking up to the Paddy Power counter and saying, hand me over $5,000 there. You're already you're seeing the money, and I know this is the thing about betting. You should never count your chickens. You should always be. You should have the opposite. Sometimes the opposite. Attitude as a sports person should have. You should be always expecting the worst instead of visualizing the victory, because vision is so much more painful when you visualize the victory and it doesn't come in. So as I said, bittersweet. I did do a small cover on her. I didn't cover on Halep enough, but I got a bit out of her at least. But it's so funny that I had one of my biggest scores because I had her at 151 in a long time. Yeah. And yet I kind of that day I felt emotionally winded. I kind of went to bed miserable. Because I thought I felt like I'd lost thousands, even though I'd lost nothing. I'd won plenty, but it's just the fact that you had to win something. But you know what? I'm delighted, delighted with the call, and I guess the other point about being bittersweet is that it had 150-1. You just know when it's that close. These chances don't come around that often, and I'm even just looking. I'm even scouring through Grand Slam prices for all the I'm all the time doing it, and I'm finding it's harder and harder to find great value bets like that, and you just think, will I ever get another chance at that price? Although I did have 150-1 winner 6 weeks ago as well in the tennis, Pablo Andahar, and he hasn't done anything since. And my last point about that as well is that I think in the situations like that, I calmed down since then and it was all right. I think sometimes you have to just take a step back analysed things and realised, do you know what, I was very lucky. And I was lucky because at the end of the day, Halep was going to win this tournament. You know, it was, her name was written on the trophy. And Stevens, I backed Stevens 9 months ago at 150s, and she didn't end up on Halep's side of the draw. So she, you know, that's how lucky I was. Exactly. You know, that if she ended up on Halep's side of the draw, I'd probably be getting nothing for her. You know, and so look, I can't complain.
And what about the men's final? Nadal, that was his 11th, wasn't it? 11th is that good for tennis?
The men's final, no, look, I don't. It's not really good from a supporter's point of view from tennis at this stage. Fair play to Nadal, you know, he's the king of clay and all that. And as we pointed, that's now Federer and Nadal have shared the last 7 Grand Slams. And like, you know, I remember January 18 months ago, we were all thinking to ourselves, you know, Federer and Nadal in a Grand Slam final. We all thought this is going to be the last time ever, and let's enjoy it while we can. And now they've been dominating it since, and we're kind of like, okay, guys, move on now. You've had your moment in the sun. We're expecting these young lads to come true. Team will win the French Open in at some stage. But you know what, it's kind of like the women's game is more at the moment particularly on clay is probably more interesting. It's like that whole argument whether do you want to see greatness, do you want to see domination, or do you want to see drama and uncertainty. And I'm always one on the side of drama and uncertainty. World Cup,
do you want 7 or 8 very good?
Yes, exactly. And I would always go with that over the domination. And just regarding the Stevens, you know, I just to talk a little bit about the Stevens Halep match. It's just funny. I just have to give Halep her due, like you know, because because at the start of the match, I thought to myself, Stevens has to let Halep be the aggressor, because Stevens moves so well and she's so hard to hit through. And in the first set, that's the way it worked. You know, it worked out that Halep was the aggressor and Stevens was the counter puncher, and Halep couldn't get through her, and Stevens ended up forcing the errors of Halep. But what you gotta, and Stevens of course showed up and she was ready to win that final. Only Halep changed tactics in the end. It wasn't really down to Stevens. Halep more or less said, "Look, and I'm on the red dirt. This is my home. I've been playing on this stuff for years and years. I'm the number one in the world, and I'm going to say you're not going to." She basically, Stevens was a wall in the first set, and then Halep then built her own bigger wall, and she said, "Look it." I'm not going to miss anymore. I'm going to play high percentage tennis, and I can play 40 shot rallies all day long if I have to. I'm not going to miss. And eventually that took Stevens out of her comfort zone. Stevens then had to attack, which is against her nature. She got tired because she's not used to that kind of intensity on clay, and she ended up trying to force the issue. Yeah. And she didn't give up. I know the final set was 6-1. Stevens at no stage gave up in that final, but you just have to hand it to Halep. What a great champion! I'm delighted for her in a way. So yeah, and just regarding the men's, look at it's the clay court season in men's. It's always kind of boring because of the scenario with Nadal. And you know, Wimbledon would be more interested, and we'll talk about the grass court season. Today's not the day for it, and we'll talk about the grass court season in Wimbledon in a couple of weeks. You did
stick a few bets up though on the Twitter page for some grass events that are starting this week. What were those bets again?
Yeah, of course, yeah. There's a few grass court tournaments on in the week, and one thing I'd like to say about that, because the grass court tournament grass court season is so short, you know, you often have players that definitely would want to make their mark, you know, straight away. And I was just looking at there's the Mercedes Cup, and geez, Paddy Power, I absolutely completely messed up. Paddy Power had some amazing prices that I didn't actually end up backing. I backed Fucsovic at 66s with Paddy Powers and Fritz at 101. Two big prices. They're on the opposite side of the draw to Roger Federer, and that's what definitely influenced me back in those. Fucsovic obviously had a great run. He won in Lyon in the clay, got to the third round of the French, and I think his game is more suited to big serve. He can hit the ball quite flat. It's more suited to the grass. Fritz likes the grass as well. He's a young American that hasn't quite, you know, there was a lot of talk about him when he was 17, 18, that he was going to be the next big thing. He hasn't quite pushed on, but I think at 100-1 he's got the talent to make a move there. There's boys like Istomin 100s. Martyr was 200s, crazy price. If he ends up getting to the final and winning it, that'll be the greatest betting regret of my life, because I didn't bag it. Shapovalov at 50s, like any tennis fan knows him. 50-1, even though he was on Roger's side of the draw. Amazing. Lopez, grass court specialist, 100-1, and they were priced that way probably because on Roger's side of the draw. But look at we can't always expect Roger to hit the ground running in these grass course tournaments at his age. So I missed out on a lot of those prices then. Then I prefer my bets on the Rico Open in Holland or the Netherlands. Medvedev at 16-1. Loved the grass. He won his first ATP tournament in, I think it was Sydney. Earlier in the year, he beat Stan in Wimbledon last year. He definitely does have a good game for grass. He reminds me a little bit of Silic. He has that kind of gangly look, but he hits the ball nice and flat.
Right.
He's a good one. And 16-1 with battery 65. And Tsitsipas was 25-1. Stefanos Tsitsipas. We all know he got to the final in Barcelona and played Madrid. He's a really good young up and comer, and the draw isn't that strong. So at 25-1, I said, you know what? I know he doesn't have a lot of pedigree on grass yet, but it's such a big price for such a class act. So back to him. And regarding the women's, I'll push on through because they're all still in. They've all won their matches so far. Then in the women's, I did tip up Kontaveit at 8-1 with Totes. She's actually out. I got seduced by the price. She's the defending champion. Tipped up a point on that, but yeah, she's out of it. So that's the only one that's out so far. Mertens at 94. She won today to win her quarter. I really like her to win her quarter. I think Van Uytvanck is maybe the toughest opponent than that, and at 94 I'd take Mertens all day long. 2 points on that. And finally in the Nottingham Open, I couldn't help but put a small bet on Watson at 25-1 because look, she loves the grass. She's done well on the grass at Wimbledon in the past, and at 25-1, she has to play Conta in the next round. I think the winner of that would probably get to the final, so she probably will lose to Conta. But at 25-1, I couldn't. And then the nap was in Nottingham. Ash Barty to win her quarter at 5-4. That was a 4-pointer. I really hope people. That's the one bet that I really really liked for the week. So I hope people got behind Ash Barty at 5-4 with Sky Bet to win her quarter in Nottingham.
Okay, Smeg, good stuff. And last of all, our last topic to look forward to this week, of course, is Thursday's US Open. You had a golfing tipster fixed to come in.
Yes, I had a man called Jerry Diver. We call him the River Diver. He's a fantastic golf punter and has had so many great results in the past, and has tipped up some winners for myself as well. But just due to unforeseen circumstances, he couldn't make it today. And also there's another man I want to get in as well, who's a great golf enthusiast. I wouldn't exactly call him a great golf punter, but an enthusiast is Owen Kennedy, but he knows his golf as well. But they'll be in for the British Open when that comes around. But in fairness to Jerry, he did leave he did a write up on it. So I'm going to read it out for you folks, and then we obviously as golf punters ourselves, we do enjoy the golf and particularly love the majors. We'll give our own thoughts on it too. So Jerry, the River Diver, says this. He says the popular bet this week is going to be Brandon Grace, a proven winner who loves link style golf courses and arrives in great form. T5 at tied 5th at Wentworth and tied 3rd at AT&T in recent starts. Very good results. His recent record in majors too is excellent, and it looks like he has a great chance of going well. 40's available, but 35's in general, and that's a half point each way on that. A couple of shouts at bigger odds is Brandt Snedeker at 80s and Jimmy Walker at 100s. It's worth noting that the bookies are very competitive for majors these days, and we have both Paddy Power and Coral going 10 places, 150 odds, and Bet365 going 8 places at 150 odds, for example. So that's something to note. Snedeker finished tied 6th last week. His last 4 US Open appearances show tied 9th, 8th, tied 9th, and that's 3 out of 4 top 10 finishes in the last US Open. So for the more cautious punter, 4-1 top 20 looks like it should definitely give interest for this weekend on Snedeker. Walker is in superb form too. 5 top 20s in his last 5 events. Proven winner on POA Anua Greens too, which is very significant. So I like I have to say I like those too. Jerry says if he had to pick one of the so-called big guns, I'd go with Ricky or Rambo. That's John Ram and Ricky Fowler, just in case people didn't cop onto that. Ricky said before that the Masters that Shinecock is one of his favourite courses on tour. power, and he should love the test presented this week. He's had the experience, power and patience needed. He has, and some will argue that he's an early man, but we all said that about Dustin Johnson only a couple of years ago. So Rambo as well has the power and an abundance of skill and class to manoeuvre his way around Shinecock. He's part of an all-Spanish group with Sergio and Rafa on Thursday and Friday, which Jerry thinks he'll love and thrive in. And he showed at Augusta that he's ready to contend at majors, and he was very impressive, and he didn't shy away from that final round, I have to say. Wouldn't be surprised to see him in the mix. So basically, yeah, he's saying a half point each way on Walkers, a point on Snedeker at 4-1 to make top 20, and a point each way on Ricky and John Ram. They are both at the 20-1 mark. Ricky Fowler and John Ram at 21 point each way. And what about you? Who are you backing yourself there, Ronnie? Are you looking forward to this?
I look forward to the golf, yeah. Not so much. I love the majors, not so much the betting of it, to be honest. I just think if you look at the likes of the US Open, I think it has 150 odd players. Like at that level, in that type of individual sport, I just don't know how you could part with too much money to bet on that, to be honest. I know you could have a small interest bets and so on, but I think generally you bet to try and win a few bob, not just for interest, for me anyway, so I wouldn't be getting too involved. I did actually have Patrick Reed backed at 45-1 to win the Masters a few months ago, but not of my own doing. I actually just cogged what Steve Palmer, the famous golf tipster, had in the Racing Post, which is exactly what your man John Duggan, mentioned on Today FM. He was in the mornings, on Off the Ball as well. He was actually on Off the Ball AM that morning, and he actually gave his tips. His tips for the Masters. He gave Patrick Reed, Patrick Cantlay and Russell Henley, and the exact reasons were literally everything that your man Steve Palmer had written. He comes out to the country then on airwaves and arrogantly comes out, these are my thoughts, these are my tips, that's typical John Duggan. He's a spoofer, and he's not worth listening to anyway. But no, so I'm not sure. I'll go with Jerry and a few of those tips, I think, Meg.
Yeah, just from my own point of view, I've always been interested in the first round leader tips. Now I like the Snedeker bet to finish top 20s. I don't particularly like him to win it, because for me Snedeker has shown time again in majors to be a bit of a bottler. But I do like him to be the first round leader because of the form that he's in. I do like him to be the first round leader. He's the same price at 80-1 to be with Bet365 as Jerry tipped him up to win it out, to be the first round leader. So I'd certainly be staking a half point each way on him. I also really like. I do like that bet on Jimmy Walker. He's in good form. Obviously, in a Baltus role in 2016 when he won the US PGA. I like the fact that he was able to. I like the way he won it. The fact that he was first round leader, and then he was able to kind of stay up the top there and have the bottle to finish the job. Yeah. When even Jason Day put a bit of pressure on him in the end. So I like there's other players that the likes of Paul Casey. When he's completely out of it and has no chance of winning, he'll then post a ridiculously low score. But like we talk about, like Patrick Reed as well was able to be first round leader and then end up finishing the job. Yeah. I like that in a player. I think that shows battle, and with him back in form, because his form was iffy there the last we'll talk about 12 months up until recently. I do think I'll certainly be following Jerry the River Diver on that. Just regarding first round bets, I just will make one point, is that I find is that, like, Justin Johnson's around 8-9-1 to win it, but I often find that sometimes there's the good players tend to be quite, the top players tend to be quite big prices to be first round leaders. And I think a lot of that comes down to like this old wisdom that top players like to play their way into the tournament, and they don't like to go gung-ho from the start. Yeah. And do you know what? I just find, if you just look at the records, certain players would probably be in a bit like that, like the likes of a Mickelson and maybe even a Tiger, or maybe Jason Day. Certain top players. But there's some players that we've seen Patrick Reed do it. We've seen Jimmy Walker do it. But like Justin Rose in 2016 finished top and finished first round leader in 2 of the 4 majors, you know, and you're always getting prices like 16 to 1 on him. Speed has done it plenty of times. Ricky Fowler, you know, was first round leader at the US Open last year, you know, so and so I think that the fact that these prices tend to be far greater, I quite, maybe some golf punters can explain that to me, but there's a lot of these guys do tend to come out of the blocks running, and certainly people. I like Dustin Johnson at 16 to 1 to be first round leader. Okay. And the other thing about Fowler is I like what Jerry's saying about Fowler. Last year, Fowler, the US Open, he didn't quite do the job, or he just wasn't up to it. I think he wanted it too much. This year at the Masters in the last round, he really did perform very, very well, and he could be ready and he'd be hungry. So anyone backing him, I think that's I like Fowler as well.
Well, that's it for today, Smeg, isn't it? So we will enjoy the start of the World Cup and the start of the US Open, and we'll see how the grass tournaments are coming on all over Europe, and we'll be back with episode 7 this time next week, where we'll see how the first group games have come on the World Cup. We'll see how the weekend went in the golf and the GA, of course, and we'll be back to attack next week, hopefully with a few winners.
Brilliant stuff. And of course, everybody, if you want to follow us on Twitter, our Twitter page is Mug Podcast. We're also, Mug's Game Podcast is also available on YouTube, so please subscribe to that. Of course, we're available to download on iTunes, Stitcher, Acast, and basically anywhere else. Absolutely, if you are enjoying the podcast, word of mouth, retweet on Twitter, give us a bit of a plug, send it on to WhatsApp groups, and if you're enjoying us, and we'll be back. If you keep enjoying it, we'll keep on doing it, and we'll be back again next Tuesday. Good luck, folks, and thanks.